It was 1991 when Joanne McSweeney stopped by the side of the road at McMaster's Beach. And how often have we done that? How often have you done that? That decision changed the course of Joanne's life. She joins me in the studio with her sister Toni, who's trying to get funds together for a new vehicle for Joe, who's been in a wheelchair since that fateful day. Good morning, Joanne.
Good morning.
And good morning, Toni.
Good morning, Scott.
Thanks for coming in. Joe, I hope this doesn't dredge up bad memories, but take us back to that day. I mean, it was a day that really changed your life and many people's lives.
Yes. I was just out with a friend and we were driving around and we just happened to drive, with no real destination in sight, but we ended up coming into McMaster's and it was an 80k zone. The road was, we were in a four-wheel drive, so we didn't notice, but the road obviously was slippery. And as we came down a bit of an incline, we noticed that there was a car had run off and into an embankment on the side of the road, so on the right-hand side of the road.
So you were being good Samaritans.
Yes,
you were stopping to try to help someone who'd obviously had a praying.
Yeah, it was a lady in a Mitsubishi van, so she'd obviously
lost control
down the hill and ran into the side of the road. So we stopped on the side of the road, got her out of her car, put her in the driver's seat of our car.
Yeah.
And this was back in, it was 1992. So we had a car phone that was connected to the car. So the owner of the car, he was on the passenger side, leaning in, ringing her work, and I was talking to her through the driver's side. You know, it was all very quick.
Yeah.
The way it happened, and then a car drove past me, and I just got a sense that I just felt it wasn't safe.
Yeah.
So I started to walk to the other side off the road.
Around the front or around the back?
Around the front, thankfully. I wouldn't be here if it was around the back.
You'd be dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was just all a flash of an instant. I vaguely recall hearing some noise and looked up, and a taxi was coming down the road and lost control and hit the back of our car, and then that hit me, I guess,
Was there oil on the road or something? Why was it happening?
It was July, so the road, it could have been wet.
Wet?
It was.
And so it was a mirror image of the other accident, but your four-wheel drive was between the Mitsubishi and the taxi.
Yes, and I guess coming down that little bit of a incline around a corner, and then you see a car or still on the road in an accident, and then another car, you hit the brakes. I guess that's what happened.
Of course.
And they weren't speeding.
I mean, it's horrible to learn this way, but there'd be so many people listening to this, driving around now, understanding this scenario and avoiding that scenario. And that is a positive, isn't it? Because you just don't expect it to happen. But when you see it all lining up, you realise if one car's gone off there, that's a spot where another car could go in the same spot.
Well, we didn't think that, and I guess
no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't at all. But
I see that all the time now.
Of course, you'd see those scenarios and know to avoid them. But
I think when you're in that moment, you got the adrenaline, and
you're trying to help someone too, aren't you? You're worried about
yeah.
someone who's in a crash, so you're good Samaritans trying to do the right thing. Then what happened from there? Well, you don't know.
Well, I was trapped under the car.
Under the four-wheel drive?
Both cars were locked.
So the taxi smashed into the back of it,
yes.
And then it's run you over. And then it's like a concertina sort of thing. It's bashed into one, and that's bashed into you.
Yeah, so I was under there for probably, I think, about an hour.
Were you conscious?
No. I have a recollection of, in my head, going, I think I just got run over. I hope I don't die. And it was I wasn't feeling anything. It was very unemotional. It was like, I hope I don't die, and then that's all I recall of. But I was very vivid that I recall that.
And then the ambulance came, and when did you get the news of your injuries, or the extent of the injuries, and tell us what the impact of those injuries?
Yeah, I had pretty significant. Well, I fractured my back in two places, so T5 and T, which is around
Up higher.
Up higher. So that's where I have no movement.
From sort of about the chest down.
height.
Yeah.
And lots of ribs and punctured lungs, and so they basically just took me to Gosford Hospital to try and stabilise me because I couldn't helicopter airlift me anyway with the punctured lungs. And
Toni, that must have been a tough time for the family. It sounds like it was touch and go for Joe there.
Yeah. Well, we got the dreaded phone call to say his sister had been in an accident, and they don't give too much over the phone, obviously. So we all went into Gosford Hospital. Oh, and we did actually get to see you. It was actually Joanne. They had a dog in the car, and I remember going in to see Joanne, and Joanne was asking about this dog, which I didn't know about. So I thought Joanne was delirious. Like, yes, I was
But
very.
it was
very
actually
freaky.
a real
The
dog.
whole scenario.
There was a big. We had an Alsatian in the back.
Did he
a German
survive?
Shepherd. I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You had more pressing problems
Yeah.
on you. You know, you're worried about the dog. ABC Central Coast, Joanne and Toni McSweeney are our guests. And, of course, you're looking after someone a great person who has some special needs too.
Oh yes, my youngest daughter Mercy. Yes, she's a well-known Central Coast local. Everyone seems to know that. Oh, you're Mercy's mum, or Mercy. Yes, she's very well known.
Mercy's got her own things to overcome, and
Yes, so she was born. Initially, they knew that she had cerebral palsy, and the paediatrician, always thought that she had some syndrome, but he just couldn't work it out. And probably 8 years later, from a medical a blood test, we found out she had another syndrome, which is called Coulan-de-Vries, which is just named after the 2 doctors, I think, who discovered that.
what are the symptoms of
the
that?
syndrome? She thankfully that she's very happy and outgoing and loves people, and she has a moderate intellectual disability as well, so she can't read or write. She just, has no idea of money, or she can't go out independently.
Are you her carer?
Yes, and
Yeah.
because she can't use her right hand properly, she's classed as hemiplegic. I'm paraplegic, she's hemiplegic, meaning
Right.
she's right side affected by her cerebral palsy and the other. So,
Do you ever feel you've been dealt a bit of a rotten hand in life?
Well,
or?
she's yes.
Obviously,
I think
she's an absolute joy and loved by all.
she is.
Yeah, but
she's nearly 21, and she's it's like she's going through late teenage, so she likes to push my buttons. But we do. She is good value, and everyone always says, oh, the carers who she goes out with, and thank goodness for NDIS. There's lots of support there for her to be out, 5 days a week to be entertained.
It's tough, though, isn't it, to find the money with what you're going through to get a vehicle to get around. How important is that?
Oh, very. Yes, I didn't sort of realise. I think you take it for granted when you have a car. And when I was at the rehabilitation centre at Ryde, which I was there for about 6 months after my accident, across the road was a Holden dealership. So I bought a new car from there and drove myself home from.
It was modified.
I wanted to,
modified for you to drive.
yes,
Yeah.
I had to actually go for my licence again in Sydney, and I'd never really driven much in Sydney, but I had to
Wow, that's
do
harder.
the whole driving test and drove myself home. So I was very proud of that moment, and but it really made me believe that I could, I've still got my independence. I can do what I want. Yes. So as long as you've got your arms, I think that makes a big difference, and the car, it makes all the difference in the world.
Well, here's a little message from someone very famous on the Central Coast who is knocking the world dead in the world of surfing. Her name is Molly Picklum, and she's taken up the cause.
Hi everyone, I just want to bring some attention to a fundraiser that's happening right now. I've come to know Joe and Mercy quite well over the last few years as they've become extended family. They are the last people who would ask for help, although any bit of help is needed right now. Joanne is in a wheelchair and has been for many years, and her daughter Mercy has cerebral palsy and is totally dependent on Joe. We are asking the community to come together to kindly donate for this cause to get them a car so they can get back on the road. If you can share the link, donate and spread the word, that'd be really great. And thanks so much for listening, and we really appreciate any support.
There's a young woman riding the crest of a wave, but not too busy to muck in. Toni, what's needed? How are people helping out?
Oh, look, the local community of Central Coast is fantastic. Well, I think we launched the GoFundMe just over a week ago, and I think we've already had close to 25,000, which is just amazing. So,
what's the target?
well, look, you don't want to set a target. Ideally, because you've got to modify the car, that's quite expensive, and there can be some rules around that about the age of the vehicle. So ideally, the last 2 vehicles, Joanne's had a Subaru. There is some restrictions on access because a lot of the station wagons now are SUVs, and they're a bit higher off the ground to get into. like I brought Joanne in one and it was difficult to get her in. So the Subaru Outback is a bit lower to the ground. When it's modified, I mean, Joanne can tell you she feels really safe, but it's got the access with the station wagon, you know, you can put the wheelchair in plus luggage.
Are there local companies who do the modifications, or you've got to take it to Sydney?
I think there's one in Newcastle or one in Sydney. I have
Right.
made contact with one to get a quote for the modifications. So that's
Not sure on that one.
No. Well, it's really, really important, I think, to get you back on the road. So how long do you think it'll take to get there?
I don't know, Scott. That's a good question.
We'll find out.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
with one of the best surfers in the world behind it, might be sooner than we know.
yes, very grateful to Molly.
Yeah,
for
can we
lovely
say a
message.
big thank you to Molly? Who,
And she's connected from a family perspective, I believe.
Yeah. She actually went to school with Mercy. Mercy and her in the same year. Obviously, Mercy was in a special needs class.
Which school was that?
Tumby High School,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then the entrance high.
Great, yeah. She's a
and
nice girl, Molly, isn't she?
She's lovely, yes.
Superstar surfer.
Yeah.
And there's a family connection, though, a marriage coming up or something?
yes, our younger sister, Christine, is engaged to Molly's dad, Kurt.
Yeah.
So that's
the
exciting as
family
well.
connection.
That's
I
the Central
know.
Coast
So we
for you.
very enthusiastically watch her in the WSL as if we're part of the team.
She's on the crest of a wave, isn't she?
She is,
She's
yes.
doing so well. It's so hard to stay in there, the top 30 in the world. Just magnificent. Well, look, I wish you all the best with this. It's an amazing story that you've got to share. It's a story that we can learn from, but it's also a story of the Central Coast coming together to look after one of their own. So hopefully you get to that goal and can keep on getting out there with Mercy and in the new car.
Yes, thank you, Scott, and big thank you to everybody who's donated so far and all the support. I'm
Thanks.
very humbled.
Thanks
Yes,
for coming in.
thank you.
Thanks, Toni.